All right, so let me see if I can share one of our emails and show you how it'll look. Because we actually use Namecheap for some of ours. We use Google for a few, and see one that have that. Okay. And sometimes it may have to be done through the domain provider as well. Let me see the advanced DNS. Oh, 1 second. It's not that one. Trying to find one that we have done. Uh, okay. I'm gonna share my screen just so you can see the back end of one. So this is one of the what we have here. So this is actually at the domain level of the domain where you can change the advanced DNS. There is it's an option in here where you can add in. This is a domain where we haven't added it in, but this is where you can actually add the record, where it be a DMARC or whatever, in at the domain level. And the domain really is the one that has the deliverability of the email, and that enhances all of that. So, like I said, Namecheap is actually I don't know if you ever use Namecheap, but Namecheap actually has great customer service. So if you ever get a domain from them, they'll actually do all of this on your behalf, or they'll send you a guide on here are the steps to install on that. So that's what I'm going to share there. Okay. Um, Let me go back to this. So that was one thing I wanted to talk about was that. Make sure you have that installed. So like I said, that if you haven't done that, that'll probably take you about 15 to 20 minutes if you have to do it on your own. And if they send you the steps, if they do it, it'll probably take them about 5 minutes to do. And that just helps to ensure that your email gets through all of the spam filters and all that into the inbox. Okay. Uh, did y'all have a chance to look at any of the other things with the email that you are sending out? And this for you, Seth, I'll start with you. Do you have them? Are you sending out just one email? Do you have the list tagged in it? How are y'all doing that right
So we have a monthly newsletter that's more informational. We're working on things like a new customer drip is definitely one of them. That's like when we sign with somebody, they get info for what our process is. And then also, if they sign up for our newsletter, we also give them a drip, but that's about it. Haven't really worked on more advertising outside of the newsletter because we don't want people to get annoyed with the quantity.
now? Okay. And with that newsletter sign up, uh, do you have once they sign up, do you have an immediate email that goes out to say thank you for joining our email? This is what you're going to get. Okay, yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, so that's immediately once they put their info in, it's one right away and then two more to be like, here's what our company's about.
Okay, and have you had a chance to actually look at the back end on I know you said you right now y'all have an average of between 45-50% open rates. Have you had a chance to also look at on average how many are either unsubscribing, how many what times a day they usually open up the email, just like out of the back end information to understand when they open the email, who's opening it, when they open it, what day they're opening on, and then also what the unsubscribing.
Um, I haven't looked at that in detail. The unsubscribe I see as I've noticed that per campaign that we send out, so it says like maybe 2 people unsubscribed with this one newsletter that we did, and then the other, I mean, it hits that 45% average pretty quickly within a day or two, but that's not quite what you're asking of like your time of day. So no, it's not something I've looked at. I kind of let MailChimp decide, hey, this is the best time to send it, and trust
Okay.
them on
Okay. All right. And Morgan, how about you? Have you had a chance to look at in terms of with the open rate, like when are they open it, what time, and then what's happening with the unsubscribe aspect of it?
Yeah, I looked at it when you mentioned it, I think the end of last month, and we were over, what was it, the 25%? We were
Hmm.
like in the 30s, between 30s and 40s, something like that. I haven't
That's
looked at
good.
it
That's
since,
good.
obviously, but
Okay. Okay. All right. What? Yeah, that's good. And then with the email copy, had y'all looked in terms of the content that's in the email to see if you're uh actually doing like I talked about last week, the 80-20 rule, where it's 80% value, 20% self promotion?
yeah.
Okay. How about you, Seth?
it. We had already sent out the one that we last did
Right, right.
before the meeting, but we're taking that into consideration. I brought it up to Jeff, and we're thinking about that and how we approach that coming up.
Okay, okay. Good deal. And then there are a couple tools here. Like this is one OmniSend, and there's another one here. Send check it. This is a subject line checker where you could type in your subject line and it gives you options. Honestly, you can also use Chat GPT too, but these two tools will pay specifically for email to uh, look at the content of the subject, whatever it is, and then hand you suggestions on how to enhance it. And so that's something that you may want to try out every now and then. Or uh, what we do sometimes, we'll send half our list, one subject line, and then send the other half of our list, the other subject line, just to A/B test to see if one is opening it more often than the others. And we like to use in a lot of our emails anything that will try to inspire curiosity. Because right now, what's happening with the economy? Talk about is this a good time to remodel or something like that? Ask like a probing question to have them think like, okay, what is it? Or the top always anything around top remodeling tip, the top 10 remodeling tips or anything like that will usually pique a homeowner's interest or anything like that that's looking for that. So that's something that you uh, may want to also look at. So I'll have these in there. I'll have these in the back end. So if you want to try these out, send send check it and then the OmniSend. These are two that we use in the past. Like I said, you can also use Chat GPT too as well. And then since Seth, you're using MailChimp, one of the things, because we have about 4 or 5 different emails we send out. This is actually one of our campaigns. We do a newsletter for some. We usually average on the first send right around a 40% rate. And then we usually a week later send out another email to all the people that did not open. And so that's usually in between another 18 to 20%. So by the end, we can get right around the 60-65% open rate. And so since you're using MailChimp, I was going to show you how easy it is to here. So with the email, and we send this out the first Wednesday of every month. So this one was sent out last Wednesday. And so we usually let that sit for, a few days or a week. Then we'll send another one. So you could just easily come here and just do a schedule resend on MailChimp and a lot of others, it'll automatically know that you want to resend it to anybody that has not opened. And then it'll usually ask you when you want to send that out and then what the subject line is. And so that's where you can use, like I said, one of these tools. You can use Chat GPT or whatever to create another subject line around whatever it was, and then see if that happens. And then, like I said, you can see here, like in May, we had an initial opener right around 42%, and the resend right around 19%. In April, the same thing, right around 42%, then the resend. So you can see a trend that when we send it the first time, we're hitting everyone, but for some reason, they're not opening, not everyone is opening it until we send it that second time. And so oftentimes we find it maybe the subject line, maybe off or whatever, and then when we A/B test it, that helps to have the open rate go up a little more. And there was one we did here in March. We actually tested two different topics, two different subject lines that got it up to 20% for that resend. And so we had tried that for the April one. It didn't work as well, but we saw it still had it up there. So it's honestly, it's all about a lot of A/B testing of the subject line and all of that in there, and that just helps. And since you both are over 25%, that's amazing in itself. So that's ultimately where we had wanted you all to be. Now it's just about having you get where you are at the 50%, get you to the 65%, and then Morgan, it's about where you at the 30 to 40% to get you into the upper 40, 50%. And so that's where we're trying to help get you all, so you can have more open rates, because obviously if that happens, you have more chance for them to look at your site, more chance for them to look at the offer, more chance for them to actually become a client. And so that's ultimately what we're after. All right. So did y'all have any questions on the resend or any of that? Okay. All right. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about there. And then and we had talked about the automation sequence that Morgan, I never asked you that. When anybody signs up for either a newsletter or whatever, do you have an immediate email that heads out to them that says, like, thank you for joining our email list, this is what you're going to get, yada yada yada?
I think so. I think somebody else
Okay.
set that up before I even came here. So,
Okay.
and I was
Okay.
just looking through our CRM, and it has it, but I don't know how to
Okay.
get to it. So
you might want to check with Rumshaw on that. So
yeah.
because you might, and what we usually suggest is like every 6 months or so, just look through it to make sure everything is still valid, that what you're sending out is applied, because you may have had in there, we're going to talk about XYZ. You may not even talk about that again, just to make sure that whatever is in there is still up to date. That's all about. Okay. So yeah,
Perfect.
so making sure that you have the automation in there, because oftentimes, and it's actually interesting, we find that if you don't have that in there, you'll have a higher unsubscribe rate, because you two probably get emails all the time, and you're probably like, I don't even remember signing up for it. I don't even know what this is all about. So by having that automation, it just reinforces that, yeah, I signed up for this and this is what I want to receive, as opposed to if they entered in the information. Because oftentimes, if you have like what I had talked about, having like either something to encourage them to sign up, like whether it be like a lead magnet or a ebook or anything like that, oftentimes you'll have people sign up just to get access to whatever that is, and they don't really want to join the email list. But if they sign up for that, if you did like an ebook on the top 10 remodeling tips, but then in the email that came out, that if it in the automation email once they sign up where they could download the ebook, you also have, since you like this, you might also enjoy our newsletter where we're going to talk about these tips and even more. Because now they may say, oh, I signed up for that, but I may want to stay on their list because now I'm going to get even more information, as opposed to if you didn't do anything at all, they're just going to be after the ebook or whatever it is, whatever they signed up for. And then they're going to jump off the list because that's all they wanted. But by having that automation, now you're saying, yes, you wanted this, but we're going to also provide X, Y, Z that you may also be interested in. Now they may stay on the list longer. So by having the automation, it just reinforces this is why you join our email newsletter or whatever it is, and this is why you should stay on. Okay. Yeah, so that's something, and then since the both of y'all have it, that's amazing. That's good. The clear, concise subject lines, like I had talked about, I'll share those two websites I had talked about. So as you prepare email for the next month or for the future emails that you send out, you can actually test it out just to see what are some good subject lines, or it may also have, because oftentimes there are trigger words. And I had touched a little bit on that last week about like free or anything like that, those type of words will have your email end up in spam or other or in the promotions aspect. So by having it in either of the subject line testers, or like I said, you could use Chat GPT-2 and just let chat know this is a subject line we plan to use for our newsletter. And you analyze it and let us know, are there any trigger words that will have the email end up in spam or in the promotion folder or something like that. And then it'll hand you some options on how to rework it. And so that small tip can have you end up in 4 or 5 more inboxes that could end up up in your open rate like that as well. Okay. CTAs, making sure that you have some type of CTA. Morgan, I see the majority of your emails, so I know y'all have CTAs in there. Seth, with your emails, do y'all usually have CTAs in there?
I don't think so.
Is there a reason why, or y'all just never thought about it, or?
Yeah, I guess we just never thought about it. Again, I inherited this very recently, so
Right.
it's just something that they got done when it needed to be done, and now, yeah, I'm working to be more intentional with it.
Yeah, and that's something, since you have over a 50% open rate, that's something by just adding a CTA for whatever, like what was the last email that y'all sent out about?
That would be our June newsletter.
And then what was in it? What did y'all talk about?
It was about one of our projects. We always include one of our projects, and then it's usually Jeff talking about something relevant, at least when he was writing it in the end of May. So that stuff we've been working on, of like what actually belongs in the newsletter. And then we're also aware that sometimes it's customers that we've already had and maybe somebody who hasn't yet talked to us about a project.
Right. So like with that last one that y'all sent off about the project or whatever, that's something that if you had a highlight on it and there were certain highlights that you may have talked about the project, whether it be in like flooring, cabinets or whatever, you may have a special on either flooring or cabinets that you could say, well, we're having a June special on cabinets or whatever. And if you're interested, click here, and that can send them to your website or to wherever else. And that can oftentimes lead to a sale or a call about whatever the project is. So you never want to lose the opportunity to have some type of call or action to have them do something that could ultimately lead to a sale. And so that's why you want to, have those CTAs in there. And then, but you want to try to, like I talked about last week, make sure the CTAs tie into what, the topic of the newsletter is about, what the content is about, what the value is about, so it makes sense. So it's not just so, because otherwise, when they read the newsletter, they're just going to be, oh, they're just trying to sell something or whatever, as opposed to if you're talking about this is a project we did where we had all the cabinets, whatever, they turned out well, whatever, and then you had something that tied the CTA tied to a sale on cabinets or of that line or whatever. It makes more sense, and it's not as salesy to the end user reading because it ties you. All right. So that's something there. Legal info, that most of the email providers now, you have to have that on there anyway, all your address information, all that. That's just for the spam laws and all that. So most of those you have to have in there anyway. Making sure you proofread the email. This sounds simple, but if you're the one writing it, if I would either have somebody else proof it or give it a day before you send it out and reread it. Because if you try to, and we've done this also where if, and I've done this in the past too, where I've written the email, tried to proof it that same day, and I actually wrote the email, so all of the errors I didn't catch. But then when I sent it out, it's like, oh man, I didn't catch that because I was already in it. But so if you're the one writing, either have somebody else read it or give some time before you reread it so you can catch any errors in there. So that's simple. And then, like I said, with the domain records, try to verify that. Testing, we had talked a little bit about that. Metrics, and then that's what I had talked about at the start. Really digging deep into the metrics to see, and let me share on there. Let me stop sharing, open up one of our campaigns so I can get a little bit into the metrics. Hold on. Summary report. Okay, so let me share again. So this is one we sent out in May. And then it just shows, so here you can see a lot open rates, click-through rates, whatever. And this was the resend here. But it just, what I actually like about this, and almost all providers do this, but you can see what links they're clicking on, and then you can click to see all the links that they're clicking on and what's happening there. And so the difference between a unique click is just that that's somebody that only clicked on it once as opposed to clicking on the same link over and over, So you could just see it, all the links that you have in there, how often they had clicked on it, where they went to from there. And that's just information that if you have the same link in your email every time, you can see a trend. Is the click-through rate going up, down, or staying almost around the same? So if it's heading up, that means obviously they're interested in whatever it is that whatever that link is. If it's starting to go down, you may want to switch it out because now they're starting to see it over and over again. They're like, okay, I know what that is. And even though you switch it out, you may have the same offer. You just may want to change up the graphic and or the text or the content around it, even if it's the same offer, just to change that up. And oftentimes that is just helping, because seeing the same thing over and over again, after a while you become numb to it and you don't even realize it's there. But if you change out the graphic, change out the text and the content, now it almost looks new. It's like, oh, okay, what is this? And then they may have clicked on it before and not really thought about it, but they may click on it this time and be like, oh, okay, this is something interesting I want to look at. Okay, so that's something you want to look at there. All right. And then also something we like to look at here too. We like to look at how the open rate is doing overall. we like to look at the click-through rate, and then one of the other things we like to look at is the unsubscribe. If you see, honestly, a normal unsubscribe rate honestly is about in between 0.5 and 1% per quarter. That's normal. If you're starting to get into like the into the 2 or 3 to 4%, you're seeing that consistently, you need to change something, because obviously you're it's actually trending in the wrong direction. You have a lot of people unsubscribing, so you need to at that point start to ask, is the value that they originally signed up for there? Do I need to change something? Do I need to segment out the list? Because I know, Seth, you had talked about y'all were still trying to iron out with the current customers or the current clients, past clients, who is it sending to? Does it all make sense? If you're starting to see a lot of unsubscribe, that may mean, okay, we may need to split up this list for current clients, for prospects, or for whoever, because obviously one entity is not seeing something in there. And then if you see that trend, now you can look into who is actually unsubscribing. Is it actually prospects? Is it actually clients? Is it actually past clients? Who is actually unsubscribing? Because that'll tell you, okay, now we may need to change and switch out, do, a newsletter just for past clients or just for current clients or whatever it is. And oftentimes, like I said, with the segmenting of the list, it's easier now, because now with chat, you could put the whole subject into chat and say, reword this email that was meant for current clients. Now make this for either our vendor partners or make this for our prospects. Let it reword that, look at it, and then you can add your editing in there too. But from the time that it took chat to reword that email, or the content in there, that may take about a minute, and then for you to relook at it and re-edit it, that may take about 5, 10, 15 minutes, and you have a whole new email and a whole new segment to send that email to. So it's not that much more time. Whereas before chat, that used to take hours. Now you could do this in less than a half hour, just to have a whole nother, the same email that you already wrote, have it in chat, change it up for a whole new audience. A half hour later, you have a whole new segment to send that off to. And oftentimes that will resolve a lot of the issues of unsubscribing or interest or whatever, because now it's aimed at whoever that new audience is, as opposed to generically sent out to everyone. Okay. So that's something we like to look at. We like to look at here, the content optimizer, changing up the images. If we have the same image over and over, changing it up every now and then just to see if that helps or whatever. And then the demographics, we like to look at it every now and then. We hardly look at the location, but because we know the majority of our email is in the US. So that's what we like to look at when we analyze our own stuff there. Okay. And let me ask you this, when you look at the email in the back end, what are you looking at in terms of if it's successful or not? Just the open rate, or what else are y'all looking at?
Yeah, mostly the open rate. Kind of, is it a negative success if people are unsubscribing? Obviously, that's kind of the default one they give you, is if too many people unsubscribe, then it was kind of didn't live up to everything else. But yeah, usually those two. And then probably if we have some contacts or some leads after that, that's also a good sign.
Okay. And how about you, Morgan? When you look at the email, how do you assess if it's a successful, not, whatever?
Kind of the same thing what Seth said. We're really just looking at like how many times it was opened, like the percentage, obviously the open rate, and then like if it bounced, or if people have it unopened, or if they like unsubscribed from it, which is usually like not often, but it's good to always like look at that and track it. So that's what we do.
Do y'all, and why have you here, Morgan, do y'all change up the time and the pay is sent, or y'all send it the same pay, same time every month?
We kind of change it up. Sometimes it just really depends on like sometimes like we like to do it at the beginning of the month because we do it like once a month
Right,
and it really just depends. So like we like kind of like looked up when like the best time to send it is normally like just based off like other people's data and it's
right.
usually like Wednesday mornings. So we started doing that and then I think I've changed it a couple times just to like compare them, but I'm not comparing them until like after this segment went through just to see like
Right.
what performed better. So like in July, I'll be
Yeah.
comparing.
And usually when you make a change, you want to give it a couple months to look at the data. Like if you have been sending it at the same time every month, all the time, and then you change it up, you you want to send it at least 2 times, preferably 3 times, before you really analyze it to see if it's actually working, helping, not helping, or whatever, because it takes some time for that to um, digest if it's actually working or not. Yeah, how about you? At when y'all send out your emails, is it the same day, same time every month, or do y'all change it up?
Yeah, we aim for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the first one of the month for our newsletter at the very least. And I haven't been able to, I mean, we could try it on Monday or Friday, but we've just figured it works best to do it middle of the week when people are in their flow. And I think that's worked for us, especially with our open rate being so high.
Yep, yep. Okay, okay. Well, that's good. Yep. And then with the purging of the list, have y'all ever done any of that? I'll begin with you, Seth.
We have not, but we've considered it, especially since last week, because of what you said about it. It sounds like it would be best to do that, but we just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah. And that's something that, a lot of people don't do. They just leave them on their list. But oftentimes, like I said, before you purge, just do an email just to all those that haven't opened the email in like 90 to 120 days, just saying, hey, we're out there. We're just wanting to see if we're still providing value. If you're still interested in this, what is the issue or whatever. You're probably not going to have 60% open that email, just to be honest. So for all of those that not even, but if it's over about 20 to 30 emails, oftentimes you will have a small percentage that will open the email and reply. And when they reply, that's information, like I said last week, that can help you out, that can help you define, okay, this is how I can either add more value to the emails, or this is how I can either segment the ones that may not want what I'm actually sending and send something else out that is more valuable to everybody else. So it can hand you insight if you get some replies, which, like I said, if you send out over about at least about 30 or so, you should get at least 1 to 2 replies. And so and then I would say for every 30 you send out, you should expect to hear from 1 or 2. So if you send out 100, you may hear from about 6 or so. And that's just on average, because obviously they're not opening it for a reason. Either they're not interested anymore, there is it, and it could also be an issue. This is why I say before you do any of that, make sure to do the domain check where you do the DMARC and all that, because it may be an issue where they may have a new email provider, or they may have a new domain provider where now where they used to get your email, they're not getting it anymore. And so if you haven't ever done that, by instituting the DMARC and all that, it'll ensure it gets into all email inboxes. as opposed if you haven't never done that before, where you may have a person that was always opening your email and all of a sudden they have it. If they change their own domain or email on their side, they may have a higher spam filter than they had in the past. So doing that first before you send out any emails, now you ensure that anybody that was not opening email, they at least got that email. And if they aren't opening now, they're either A, not interested, and then that's one that you could probably have on the list to purge as well, you know. All right. And then let's see what else. Talked about metrics and email lists. Okay. So that was what I had really wanted to talk about today, making sure we went over all of this. From what you heard last week and what I went over, did y'all have a chance to put together a game plan or how y'all want to do your own email going forward? And I'll begin with you, Morgan.
Nope, that's something I need to discuss with Kim.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we'll touch on that next week. Okay. Matt, how about you? Did y'all have a chance to look over everything to see what you're doing now, and from what I went over last week, how you may be able to put together a game plan for going?
I did briefly talk about that with Jeff, kind of as a relay of like what we talked about, or what I learned, what your video said last week. But that was it was all stuff they were like, yeah, that's on our radar. That's on my to-do list now.
Okay.
So it's not like we haven't made a plan to make a plan, but we still need to make the plan.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so that's what we'll touch on next week. See if you can put together a little game plan. We could go through that next week. And I'm also showing an example of one of the clients we had here that did email for a while, what happened after we changed it and all that, and some of these things just to show you what happened there. And I'll share that with y'all next week. So did y'all have any other questions? Okay. All right. Well, I will hand you, we'll end this about 15 minutes early and I'll hand y'all some time back. And so, like I said, next week we'll talk about the game plan and then I'll share some more examples that we have in the past. All right. All right. So y'all have a good weekend and I'll talk to you next Friday.